Man United, but segueing slightly. Fabrizio this morning claims that the Garnacho deal with Chelsea, the personal terms element is essentially all tied up. The player has agreed to go. It's now about the clubs negotiating. What's your latest understanding of Chelsea's pursuit of Alejandro Garnacho? Is it a deal that's relatively close to a conclusion? What's your thoughts and feelings on that, Ben?
Yeah, Alejandro Garnacho, I'm expecting to join Chelsea. We heard some reports yesterday that suggested the player's got two options in mind. One is to stay at Manchester United. The other is to go to Chelsea. That's not my understanding. It's done between Manchester United and Alejandro Garnacho. Manchester United are planning on a Garnacho exit. It's pure profit on the books. Garnacho didn't enjoy playing in the central area because he wants to be a left winger. He's not getting that many opportunities there. And now through the centre, his minutes are going to be diminished because of the arrivals of Brian and Burmo and Mateus Cunha. So I'm told the player is not giving that much, if any, consideration to staying at Manchester United. Maybe you say that to an extent because if a move falls through, you don't want to have to backtrack and say you were desperate to leave the club. But my understanding is not that Garnacho is weighing up Chelsea or staying. My information is that Garnacho only wants Chelsea, and the expectation is that this deal will get done. Chelsea have been quite smart. They've left it until late in the window after Benjamin Sesko, especially if United also want to add a midfielder and a goalkeeper. They know outgoings are going to be important. And like I said before, Garnacho reflects very favourably on the books. So at the moment, we have a golf valuation. As I broke exclusively yesterday morning, the formal club-to-club talks have now started. So this could move very quickly because remember, clubs don't just look at the end of the window. They think of a sort of mini deadline between now and early next week because that gives you a chance of getting a player in, doing a week and being available for the first Premier League game of the season. So Garnacho, for me, will end up a Chelsea player, barring anything unexpected. And then it's all just about price because Chelsea is starting at 30 million, which might feel a bit low to Man United fans. Manchester United have dropped their price from January, which was somewhere in the region of £60 million or even a little bit more. And now the asking price is 50. But I think there'll be a little bit of flexibility there too. So if they meet halfway, it becomes a £40 million deal. Chelsea are also willing to do a sort of try before you buy structure like they did with Jadon Sancho, where maybe they commit to a higher number in an obligation, but do a loan first and have an override penalty. So an identical formula to that of Jadon Sancho. But let's see if Manchester United play ball with that idea, because obviously when you've done it once and you've taken the penalty, there's a bit more reticence. And I think Man United fear a little bit that Garnacho's fine for Chelsea now because it's Gittins, Garnacho on the left. It's probably Pedro Neto and Estevao on the right. If Xavi Simons arrives and Cole Palmer, they're your 10s. And then what happens is that João Pedro gets bumped up to a 9 along with Liam Delap and Nicholas Jackson leaves. So everyone's saying Chelsea are overstocking, but it is really just two players in every position. But if you take Garnacho on a loan with an obligation and an override, then what might happen is Giovanni Quenda could arrive in 2026, and maybe a first team player. Then Estevao could break through, but have to play on the right because of Palmer and maybe Xavi Simons. And Pedro Neto was outstanding in the Club World Cup, and he's just as comfortable on the left-hand side. So you're suddenly in a situation where you need a left-sided attacker now, but flash forwards a year, and they might have plenty of options. And obviously, if Tyreek George was to be loaned and not permanently sold, then does he break on the scene and make a case for minutes as well if he doesn't depart the club permanently? So I think Manchester United are really focused on just getting Garnacho out with a definitiveness, not alone with an obligation and a penalty. But let's see, because late in the window, it's the buyer often that has all the ascendancy, and the market knows after Benjamin Sesko that Manchester United need to bring in some money. So I think this deal gets done. I think it happens relatively quickly, and it will be a surprise if Alejandro Garnacho isn't a Chelsea player by the end of the window.
I do need to put out a public service announcement and a trigger warning. So DJ, we have a Chelsea viewer called DJ, who I respect because he's a member and he super chats a lot, and that helps my platform and our community a lot. But for 3 months has moaned every time I've done a video where I've mentioned Garnacho to Chelsea, and has directly stated, but often implied, that I'm forcing the news. I'm putting it out there and it isn't true. There are not real links. So I just wanted to say, DJ, I hope you're okay after listening to that from Ben. If you need any help, DMs are here. A hug, Let me know your location. We'll send you a hug because I know you're going to be panicking about that. If DJ's watching, big up yourself, my friend.
It's sort of funny though, because Chelsea fans were not enamored by Jadon Sancho, and then when they understood the structure and the price, they thought, okay, it's a bit of a free hit. And then Sancho contributed and was very happy at Chelsea, but they couldn't agree terms. And I think if you look at Garnacho and what he's capable of, the overhead kick goal and so on, you think if he gets going, great. And I was having this conversation yesterday on a Chelsea feed where people think Garnacho will end up being a problem, Sancho will end up being a problem, Rashford will end up being a problem, because all of them have got a backstory where it didn't work at Manchester United. And that's fine if you're a Manchester United fan or a Chelsea fan, because you've seen that and you've heard the manager speak. But there's always two sides, and we have to, as journalists, be respectful to the players as well. So if Marcus Rashford wasn't a cultural fit and wasn't allegedly training in the way Manchester United expected, but then did really well at Aston Villa and could be on fire at Barcelona. If Jadon Sancho did better at Dortmund and Chelsea than he did at Manchester United, and if Alejandro Garnacho moves to Chelsea and is viewed as more consistent and better than at Manchester United, then you've got three players that have all left Manchester United and been a better fit than when they were at Manchester United. And I'm not saying one side is right or wrong, because as journalists, we have to give you the club perspective, the manager perspective, the player perspective. But there's definitely a pattern of several recent players, for whatever reason. You could even say Scott McTominay, although I think he was great at Manchester United too, but not Ballon d'Or nominee Scott McTominay. There is a pattern of exits from Manchester United where when they left, some Man United fans said, we're comfortable with them going. And many buying club fans said, we're not so sure about this because we've heard he doesn't apply himself. We've heard he's inconsistent. We've heard he's not a dressing room fit. And yet now it's 4 or 5 players that have left Manchester United in the last 2 years. And I have to be honest, most of them have done okay since they've left Manchester United. And I don't think Garnacho will be any different.
I absolutely concur. And I think one of my old bosses, I hope you're well, Peter, if you're watching. He said this to me when I was very young in the work environment, and it was a weird analogy, but it just made sense to me. He said, Terry, look, basically, I wasn't getting on with my line manager, and they moved me to a new team, and I was getting on great. And I said, I just wanted to let you know I was never a bad person. I don't even think my line manager was bad. I think we just clashed. And he said, yeah, that's life. He said, sometimes he goes, I like jam sandwiches, I like cheese sandwiches, but I wouldn't like a cheese and jam sandwich at the same time, or in the same sandwich. And I went, it's a silly analogy, but it made a lot of sense. And sometimes it's just that, or horses for courses is a better phrase for it. And that's all that's happened here. And I think my message to Chelsea fans on a real level, I'm a bit annoyed. I wish he wanted to go abroad. I wish we were selling him to Napoli, Saudi, somewhere else. He's going to be a problem for us in the Premier League because I think he's a very good and very talented player who has just got caught up in the toxicity at Man United, which I believe we're now starting to remove. But the issue that you have sometimes is I've got family members at school teachers, and you can sometimes get a kid that's joining. I remember being told a story by my cousin. There's a kid joining his school. My cousin was the head teacher at the school, and there's this kid joining his school, and they get like a big briefing about all the bad things he's done in his previous school, but he got expelled. But of course, children have got to be in school, so they're putting his parents relocated, they were coming here. And he said he was so nervous because his school was run really well. There was very few naughty kids, and he was worried about the disruption the kid might bring. But of course, they're teachers. They go to that job because they've got an affinity to help children and teach them. But he came into an environment that wasn't toxic. There wasn't many other bad kids. There was a bit of harmony in the school. There was a bit more time for him because of that. And he flourished, and he became... he ended up. I remember him always saying this story about how he left with really good grades. He helped turn his life around, and of course he had to do it. And I think, although I'm not trying to compare Garnacho to a child joining a school, I think the parallels are that you join an environment that isn't toxic, and you can change very quickly. Equally, sometimes even if that culture is trying to change where you are, there is still the legacy issues and the remnants of problems and the bad habits, and it's hard to remove them. A change is as good as a rest. And I think Chelsea fans should be really, really excited about those things. I really, really do.
Yeah, I agree with you, by the way.